Hey students, how are you? Hopefully all of you are doing good. Oh, correct. Right. So here I am, CM Mohit Arora again. And from today onwards, we are just going to start a new video series on ACCA skill level subject performance management. Right. And I'll try to keep this video in English language only so that the students across the globe can take the benefit of these videos. Right. In this video series, we'll discuss the most important and relevant topics of ACCA performance management subject. Right. And I'll try to discuss how to attempt the section C questions particularly with the help of Excel and all. Right. So let's start the series formally, and for that purpose, I need to just share my PPT first, and then we'll start it formally. Right. So what I'm doing, I'm sharing my screen first, and hopefully it is now being shared and visible to you. Right. Hopefully it is visible to everyone, and you can see at the initial slide, we can see a student having a lot of confusion about ABC, right? He's trying to cracking the code ABC that has been given by his teacher, and you may have, after seeing this, you can say image, you may have an impression that this topic is going to be the toughest one, but the reality is just opposite, right? This is actually a very easy topic of ACCA performance management, right? Important topic, and let's start it formally. So what is the meaning of ABC, and why this topic is basically important to us? Just because, not because it is there in PM syllabus, but those who want to just uh, opt for APM in professional level, then ABC will be a important topic for them also, right? And practical application is much wider, right? That is why for practical application, practical experience, that is this is a very relevant and important topic, as well as for the examination point of view, we can have certain questions on ABC in PM as well as APM paper, right? So what does it contain? What it is having exactly? So let's start the slide formally. So I'm just flipping this first page, and let's see what we have in the second page. Activity based costing, right? And we'll start with the meaning of activity based costing. What does it exactly means, right? And for that purpose, we need to just create a link between the management accounting and performance management, so that we should be able to understand that why this ABC is there, right? So, you know that activity based costing, first of all, I told you this is a very important topic, not from the point of view of, you can say, PM, but also from the point of view of APM, and for practical applications, it is a very important topic. Then the questions are regularly being asked from this topic, and at the same time, it is one of the easiest topic of the PM, right? So what it is, now curiosity has been increased. So what it is exactly? You know that we had already studied cost accounting or costing in management accounting papers, right? Right? We know what is costing. So here the student is again and having a lot of question marks that what the costing exactly is. What is the costing? Who is going to answer me what is the costing? So the student is telling you what is the costing? The computation of cost of production of different products and services. So what is telling us about that costing is a subject, or a, you can say, topic where we learn how to compute the cost of production of different products and different services, right? So that exactly we should be able to identify that what should be the fair price of the product or service, right? And whether the product is giving us profit or not, That is why the cost accounting or costing is basically a very, very, very important topic. So the first and foremost objective of the cost accounting is it tells us about the process of computation of cost of different products or services. Correct? Right. So yes, in cost accounting, we are just required to calculate the cost of production. That is it. Right. Then again, what is the meaning of cost then? Right. What is cost? For cost accounting purposes, we know that cost can be segregated into two different parts or two different categories, and one of them is direct cost and the another one is indirect cost. है And you must have studied it at ACCA knowledge level in management accounting, right? So we are having two types of cost, direct cost and indirect cost. And let's discuss what is the meaning of direct cost and indirect cost one by one. So let's start with direct cost. What is the direct cost? So yes, the direct cost is the cost that is, you can say, directly attributable or identifiable or relatable to a product or service for which it is going to be incurred. So we can have a direct relationship between the product and the cost itself, right? That is why the cost per unit can be easily calculated in case of direct cost. So whether if the cost is basically a direct cost, will be able to calculate cost per unit of the product with much ease, right? So, sir, we are not just able to understand. So we should have an example here. So I am having an example that I am having a log of wood. You can say there is a wood bundle of wood here, and this bundle of wood can be considered as an item of direct cost in case of a wooden chair. Is it? Yes, correct, right? What I said, that direct cost is something that can be directly attributable, or you can say identifiable with relation to a certain product, right? So are we able to identify that wooden chair is basically being made of wood only? Correct now? Yes. So, are we able to identify that how much wood would be used in a wooden chair? The quantity of wood can also be calculated easily per chair basis. Correct now? And if we are able to identify that how much quantity of the wood is being used for production of a chair only, then it is also easy to calculate that the cost of wood per chair. You know? That is why the wood cost of wood can be calculated, can be considered as an item of direct cost, just because first of all we are just able to identify that the quantity of wood being used in a single in the production of a single chair, right? And the price or the cost of the wood that is being used for the production of a single chair again. These two qualities basically make wood an item of direct cost. Then what is the indirect cost in that case? Right? You have must have obviously studied. Everybody knows what is the meaning of indirect cost. So let's discuss it formally again. What is the meaning of indirect cost then? Indirect cost is equals to overheads. Yes, I told you in the management accounting paper also that indirect cost is equals to overheads. Indirect cost may have indirect material, indirect labor, indirect expenses, and all of these are collectively called as overheads. Right? And what are overheads then? That is something that facilitate or make possible the carrying out of the production process. So this cost is basically supporting the production process, but not the main element of, you can say, the product's cost. It is just there for supporting. Incurred for output generally, and you are not basically able to identify or relate the same with a particular work order or a particular product or a particular service. So this is the kind of cost that is being incurred generally for all the goods taken together or all the production or services taken together. So it is, you can say, a common cost, right? And again, cannot be conveniently traced to or identified with the articles produced or the services provided on per unit basis. So it is almost, you can say, very difficult to identify the overheads cost per unit for a single product or a service, right? So as it is just being incurred commonly for multiple types of product and services, that is why it is very, very, very difficult to identify the same as per unit basis. Correct? Okay. Then the next thing is represents significant portion of total cost. That is why it can be ignored in calculation of cost per unit, right? For the reason that it is not basically attributable or identified with a particular product or services, we cannot absolutely or altogether ignore the overheads. It can't be ignored. We have to. We have to take it. We have to consider it while calculating the cost of production per unit. That is why it becomes really very difficult for us to identify that how much of the overhead item or how much of the overheads are basically incurred for a single product or service, and it is almost very difficult to find out the accurate cost of production for that particular product or service. Correct? Right. So what to do? So what to do in that case? So before understanding that what to do, we should have an example of indirect cost here. So we can say a favicol or an adhesive in case of wooden chair, or you can say a furniture manufacturer. We know that for you can say joining all the parts together, for attaching all the parts together, we need adhesive materials, and favicol is one of the adhesive material. You can say, right? So it can be used for manufacturing of wooden chair. Yes, it can be used for manufacturing of wooden table. It can also be used for manufacturing of wooden cabinet, and it can also be used for manufacturing of a wooden bed. Right. So if you are having a box of favicol or a box of adhesive, you can say, right, that adhesive can be applied in production of any of the above mentioned goods, right? Okay. So you can ask me, sir, this is the same case. We can say that wood also can be applied or be used for production of multiple products. So it is the same case as wood. What is the difference between then the favicol and the wood? Right. Why we consider wood as a direct cost or why we consider favicol as an indirect cost? Why then? Just because first of all, you are not just being able to identify that how much of favicol in quantity is being used in production of a single unit of wooden chair or wooden table or wooden cabinet or wooden bed. Right? Is it possible to identify that how much quantity of the favicol is being used for production of a single unit? The answer is a big no. Yes, and at the same time, it is not also very easy to identify the cost of favicol per unit of chair or per unit of table or per unit of cabinet or per unit of bed. Is it easier? No, waste. Right. The cost of wood, quantity of wood and the cost of wood per chair can be easily identifiable, attributable, calculatable. Right. But the cost of favicol per wooden chair, per wooden table, wooden cabinet or wooden bed is almost very difficult to identify or relate with a particular. Right. That is why what we can say that the cost of favicol can be considered as an item of overhead. So what's the problem, sir? You are just telling us that I am just going to tell you about activity-based costing, and now you are just telling us or explaining the difference between direct and indirect cost. What is the connection of direct and indirect cost with activity-based costing at all? Right. So yes, I'm just going to move further and tell you the attachment or connection between the indirect cost and activity based cost. Right. So let's move to the next slide. We know that overheads basically consist of an important or significant portion of total cost. That is why we cannot ignore them. They must be included in the production cost or cost of provision of service. But the problem is we are not being able to identify or relate the overheads to a single product, or you can say service, right? That is why what is written here, hence overheads should be distributed among various products or services. So what we are required to do, we are required to distribute overheads between different products and services so that a fair portion of that cost could be included in the cost of production of all the products and services. Hence, the distribution is very much required and important. Now, that is why we are having two methods for distribution of overheads. And one of them is an absorption costing that we had already studied at management accounting paper, ACCA knowledge level, right? So we already discussed about absorption costing. That absorption costing is a method for distribution of overheads to the cost of product, right? And I already told you at the time of management accounting as well that apart from absorption costing, we are also having and another method for distribution of overheads, that is basically activity based, right? So what is activity based costing actually? Now I come to the point. What is activity based costing actually? It is a method for distribution of overhead, right? So what we are going to study here, under activity based costing, how to distribute overheads amongst different products and services with the principles of activity based costing. Hopefully everybody have a fair understanding about that we what we are going to study particularly in this topic. Yes, is it? Yes. So we should move further. Hopefully we should move further, right? Should we move further? Okay. So I'm just going towards my next slide. And now we'll just try to find out the difference between absorption costing and activity based costing. And that I'll just try to explain with the help of an example as well. But still, first we should study theoretically that what is the difference between absorption costing and activity based. So what I'm doing, I'm just showing you a picture. You can see there is a picture, right? So you can see a group of friends here, right? Is it yes? What they are doing? They are partying. Huh? So a group of friends go for a party. They went for a party and they are looking happy together, right? So, sir, how party is basically linked with activity based costing? Huh? So let me show you next thing. It is a country party, right? This is a party that you can like categorize as a country party. What is a country party? As a student, we know that we all have a limited amount of pocket money that we are just getting for our parents, from our parents, right? And that is why a single person may not have enough amount or money to throw a party by his own or her own. Right? Right. So sometimes what students do, they just do a country party. Country party, then in that party, everybody will make their contribution. And all the friends will enjoy the party. Right? That means at the end of the party, what will happen? When the waiter brings the bill, they will share the bill between them. That is the basic concept of country party. Hopefully, everybody got a proper understanding what I mean to say, right? So here, a group of friends is doing what? A country party, And the problem is that when waiter brings the bill, so how this bill is going to be distributed amongst friends? Now, this is the major question or a problem, right? So you can say, sir, there is no problem. What we'll do? We'll just divide the bill among the number of people that are enjoying the party, right? We'll share the bill equally, right? Now, maximum times this will only happen. Correct, Mark? Okay, right? Is it correct? Yes. So maybe equally. So if you are just equally distributing the bill, then knowingly or unknowingly, you are just applying the principles of absorption cost, right? So whenever you are just dividing your bill equally, it is according to the principle of absorption cost, right? That is how your overheads are normally being distributed by using absorption cost. But this equal distribution of expense may not be acceptable to everyone. Sometimes yes, sometimes a big no. Why no? Let's move to the next slide. Here also you can see group of friends and they are also enjoying a party. But only one person seems to be enjoying the party at all. Right? So another group of friends also go for a party. It is also a country party. But here they don't want to share bill equally. Now you can understand why. Yes? You can understand why? Just because only a guy with brown t-shirt seems to enjoying the party most. Huh? And everybody is looking at the face of this guy. Right? So if he is eating more than anyone present in the party, then everybody will think, why will share the bill equally? He should be charged most. Am I correct or not? Right. So what they'll do? Then again, they'll have a question how the bill is distributed. Right. So what they can do, they want individual bill by applying the principles of activity based cost. If they say that no, 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 we don't want the bill to be split between us equally, just because the reason that only the one guy is enjoying the party most, that he had eaten all the food, and we are just not we were not just able to take a single, you can say, piece of food from him, right? That is why he should be charged most, right? So what they can do, they can ask or approach waiter, what, he just, sir, please bring a separate bill for everyone. What do you think? Will the waiter bring the separate bill for everyone? Is it possible? Is it possible? You can say, yes, sir. Is it possible? It is possible. So possibilities to are there, right? But why the waiter is basically denying? Can you give me the reason why the waiter is being basically denying this, that he cannot bring a separate bill for everyone? Just because there is a technical difficulty that the waiter has to regularly stand beside them and have to regularly watch that who is eating what is the price of the product, you can say, or you can say the meal, and which person is to be charged with which amount, right? So a detailed analysis of what everyone is eating is very much required. So it will take a lot of time of waiter, correct? Yes, it will take a lot of time of waiter. So if he is not compensated with adequate consideration for the same or adequate remuneration for the same, he'll not be interested in doing this kind of work. Right? What I'll ask? Okay, give me $1,000 as a tip, and I'll separate the bill, split the bill for you. Right? So that is why what I'm telling you. It may be possible for the waiter to bring a separate bill, but he will not do the same just because it will increase his work and will not increase remuneration in that proportion. If you are ready to pay that much of remuneration to the waiter, then he may be interested for the same, right? But what will happen at the end? Your bill will be accurate, right? Your cost will be accurate, your bill will be accurate just because waiter will do a detailed study and will give you a separate bill to each person, right? So that is why if I say what activity based costing does, so general takeaways, there are certain takeaways that we should know before starting the topic formally. The first is activity based costing is a technique used for distribution of, correct? This is clear. It allocates overheads to the cost in a more logical and detailed manner. So as I quoted an example of, you can say, the country party, if the bill is to be split between the participants equally, that it may or may not be accurate, right? But if the bill is, if the waiter is ready to give them a separate bill for every person, then the bill amount for every person or distribution of cost for every person will be more accurate, but at the same time more detailed. So what activity based costing does? It basically it does the distribution of overheads for us in a more detailed and logical manner. So it is more detailed and logical than the traditional absorption costing. That is why it gives you the most accurate results. Correct? But at the same time, it do not reduce cost. It do not reduce cost. This is the very you can say big misunderstanding among the students, that activity based costing is basically there for controlling or reducing your cost. That is exactly not so. Just because, as I quoted the example of, you can say, the country party, you can say, right, in that case, what will happen? Your bill amount will be same, right? The total bill amount will be same. But if you distribute the bill equally, or if you like have the separate bill for each one of the participant, then the total bill amount will not change altogether, right? But if you apply, you can say, separate bill concept for every person, then bill amount, total bill amount will be distributed in a more logical and accurate manner. So what activity based costing does, it just basically distribute total overheads in a more logical and accurate manner, and it does not reduce your cost anyway, right? In fact, implementation of ABC can increase your total cost, right? Right? Why? Just because if the waiter is ready to bring a separate bill for every person, then what he will demand? An additional tip. Just because he has to work additionally. Right? So that is why, in fact, whenever you apply the activity-based costing, then due to the nature that it distributes the overheads in a more logical and detailed manner, due to this fact, the cost of implementation of ABC will increase your total cost. Right. So why to apply ABC? Maximum times, if your distribution of overheads is not basically accurate, then your product may be under cost or over cost. Right. So if your product is basically under cost, then your product will be underpriced as well, and you will not be earning adequately if you are selling your product at a price lesser than that it is expected to be. Right. And if your product is basically overcost, then overcosting will result in an overpricing. Then your product demand will definitely rise and you'll not be able to face off the competition in that case. right? So an accurate cost structure is very much required to face the competition and to earn the adequate amount of profits. That is why if your cost structure is not adequate, then you will suffer a loss, right? That is why maximum times implementation of ABC is required, right? But remember always that it will increase your cost only, it will not reduce it. It will basically distribute the cost in more accurate and logical manner. So that is why neither ABC nor absorption costing is single-handedly applied everywhere, right? They will not have the universal applications. This will basically deviate or varies case to case, right? Sometimes wherever you can say you're doing a costing for a small organization, right? Where the activities are not too much, right? And a lot of detailed study is exactly not required. In that case, absorption costing will give you enough sufficient satisfactory results, right? But in case of a large organization dealing with multiple products, having a lot of items and overheads, right? In that case, activity-based costing will give you a better accurate results. That is why you need to just see the facts and figures of each case before applying any one of the method, either absorption costing or activity-based. Hopefully it is cool. You understood this, correct? Okay, the next thing is ABC should be used where the benefit through fair allocation of overheads is very significant. Right. So I told you earlier as well that ABC, when to use ABC, when the distribution is so significant, so important that correct distribution will obviously results in you a correct pricing of the product, and that correct pricing will create a demand for the product, and the profits will also increase, and the increased profit will compensate the cost of implementation of ABC. Then it is okay to apply ABC. Otherwise absorption cost can only be applied. Correct? Right. So for implementation of ABC, you are required to do a cost benefit analysis that okay, whether the ABC application is exactly required or not. So hopefully it is clear to all the theoretical difference between activity-based costing and absorption costing. Now what we are going to do, I'm just going to show you a question, a numerical question, and we'll see that how absorption costing will work, and when we apply the activity-based costing, what difference it will create in the cost structure of the products and services, right? So let's have an example here, and hopefully everyone is just being able to see the example at your screen, right? Absorption cost. Is it visible to everyone? Correct? Is it yes? Yes. Okay. So what to do? We'll see this. What this is telling us about. So a company manufactures three products. You can see here, and three products that are P, Q, and R, and data relating to them is given. That they are just telling us that particulars PQR, machine hours per unit, they had given us 10, 18, and 14 machine hours, direct labor hours at a rate $20 per hour. So total hours that are required, 4 hours for product P, 12 hours for product Q, and 8 hours for product R respectively. Similarly, they had also given you the direct materials cost per unit in dollars, $90, $80, and $120 respectively for PQ and R. Right. And they also give you the production units 3,000, 5,000, and 20,000 respectively. Correct. What they are asking that they are telling you the total amount of overheads are total 24 lakhs, or you can say yes, 24 lakhs or 2 million, 2.4 million you can say, right? Okay. So 24 lakhs. Currently the company uses traditional costing system and absorbs all production overheads on the basis of machine hours. Now they are telling you that currently what company does is applying the absorption cost thing, and the absorption base they are having right now is the machine hours. So they are applying or distributing the overheads on the basis of machine hours. Now calculate the cost per unit of each product using the traditional method of absorbing all overheads on the basis of machine hours. Right. So what they are asking? They are asking you to identify the cost per unit on the basis of absorption costing if we distribute overheads on the basis of total machine hours. So here the recovery base is machine hours. So what to do in this case? We are just required to identify the total machine hours that are being used here in the company, right? So what I'm doing, I have just copied the things here, and here I'm just copying the data from the question only. So we are having three products PQR, and to calculate total machine hours, what I should do, I should just put it here. I'm sorry. What I should do, I should put it here only and keep a heading here. What total machine hours? Right. So what I'm calculating here for the purpose of absorption of overheads, 24 lakh dollars, I am just required to calculate the total machine hours. Right. So how many machine hours are there? So what they had just given you machine hours per unit. Right. So they have just given you a data of machine hours per unit. What I'm doing, I'm just copying it from here to there. Right. And they had also given you the production in units. Right. So I'm copying this one also, production in units, right? Correct. So we had just copied it, production in unit, and I'm just copying it again and to create a table here. So here what I am required to do, I'm just required to calculate total machine hours, right? So total machine hours, how many machine hours? What we will do, if product P takes 10 machine hour per unit and the production of product P is 3000 units, then how many machine hours will be used, right? So what to do, just to multiply this cell with this one, right? So I'm getting 30,000 machine hours here, copying the formula, 90,000 machine hours here, and 280,000 machine hours here, correct? Okay, now I'm copying it again here. I need one more thing, that is total machine hours. So total column I had just created additionally, and I don't need this, so I'm just deleting it and applying a formula here. Total machine hours. So total machine hours is the collective sum of the machine hours being used for production of PQR respectively. So I'm just doing a sum of these three cells. Right. There are 400,000 machine hours in total. Correct? Okay, understood? So total machine hours are 400,000. Right. So for the purpose of, you can say, charging the overheads of 24 lakh dollars or 240,000 $240,000 of overheads, what I'm doing again, I'm just copying this row here from here to here only, right? And I'm putting like total overheads in dollars, right? So total overheads in dollars, I don't need formula here, so I'm deleting the formula from here and putting directly 24, I'm sorry, not here, here, 240,000, right? Okay, okay. So total 2,400,000 overheads are there. Correct? Is it okay for everyone? Correct? Okay. So what to do? Then if you remember then what we are required to do? We are just required to calculate an OAR. That stands for overhead recovery rate. So I'm just uh, writing the full form here, and in bracket I will write the short form also. Overhead recovery rate. That is basically what OAR, overheads recovery rate. You can say ORR also. Okay, but normally we use OAR. OAR stands for, I just replace recovery with absorption, right? We may like call the same as overhead recovery rate as well, right? But the most popular name is overheads absorption rate. That is why it is being called as OAR, absorption rate, right? Overhead absorption, correct? So OAR. How to calculate OAR? So I know that I'm having total $2,400,000 overheads here, and these overheads are required to be absorbed on the basis of total machine hours. So I'll just be able to identify that how much overheads are there for every single machine hour. Right. So what to do? Just to divide this cell, that means 2,400,000 with 400,000. That means total overheads divided by total machine hours to have an overhead recovery rate, that is $6 per hour. Correct. So what we did, we are just able to identify that okay, the company is basically incurring a total overheads of $2,400,000, and according to absorption costing, what we have done, we had just taken a single recovery base, that is basically a machine hours, the total number of machine hours, and we had calculated an overhead absorption rate on the basis of those machine hours, and then comes out to be $6 per hour. So what we will do now, for the purpose of calculation of total cost, what we will do now, I'll just copy it here again, right? So here I'm copying the entire table again, right? So what to do? I'm just replacing this with cost per unit, cost per unit. So how to calculate cost per unit? What they had already given you, they had already given you direct materials cost per unit, right? So what I'm doing, I'm just copying it from here to here, direct material cost per unit, right? It is already given in the question, right? If I talk about, like, they had also given us direct labor, but they had given us only the direct labor hours. So I'm just converting these hours into cost, right? So what they are telling us, okay, direct labor hours are, you can say direct labor hours are 4, 12, and 8 respectively, and the cost of every hour is, $20, right? So what I'll do, I'll just multiply 4 with $20 to convert into total per unit cost. Similarly, 12 multiplied with $20, and similarly 8 multiplied with $20 to get the per unit cost. Correct? Okay, is it okay? Yes? Right. Now, what we'll do, we'll just charge overheads, or you can just have the prime cost first, right? You can have the prime cost also first, right? So what I'm doing, I'm just copying it from here to here. This is prime cost, right? So what is prime cost? The total of all direct cost, you must know, right? So total prime cost is, prime cost per unit, if I talk about how much it is the total of this and this one, $170, and I'll copy the formula from these cells to this cell. and I don't need it, so I'm deleting it, right? And to be more, you can say presentable, I'm just creating a box here that should be able to like distinguish. Okay, this is the total of prime cost, right? So this is the total of prime cost, correct? This is the prime cost. What to do then? Overheads. Now I'll charge overheads. So overheads overheads on the basis of what? Just tell me. On the basis of machine hour. Overheads per unit, we know that we are having an OAR of $6, but this $6 is per machine hour, right? So per machine hour. So we know that how many machine hours are there? So for product A, there are total 10 machine hours and 6 per machine hour. So it is 60. For product B, there are 18 machine hour and OAR is 6 per hour. So that is why for product Q it is 108 total overheads that needs to be charged here. Then again for product R there are 14 machine hours at the rate $6 per hour. So $84 must be charged here. Right? That is why your total cost per unit. So how much your total cost per unit will be? For product P, it is a total of 170 prime cost and the overhead 60, 230. And for product Q, again it is a total of 320 and 108. And for product R, it is a total of 280 and 84. That is 360, and I don't need this total column, so I'm just deleting it. Right? Okay. Is it okay? Yes. Is everybody able to now understood, okay, what do we mean by absorption costing and how like in absorption costing we charge overheads, right? So I'm just making it more like presentable. That is why I'm doing this one. This one. Just give me a minute. Two. Now this looks more presentable. Huh? Right. So yes, what is total cost per unit? 230 in case of product P, 428 in case of product Q, and 364 in case of product R. Now we know that okay, we knew the prime cost basically. The direct cost is basically directly identifiable. That is why we calculated the prime cost first, 170, 320, and 280. But the problem was the distribution of 24 lakh, or you can say $2,400,000. Right. So $2,400,000 of overheads are now being distributed on the basis of machine hours by using the principles of absorption costing, and that is how we calculated overheads cost per unit on the basis of machine hours: $60, $108, and $84 in case of PQR respectively, and that is how we calculated the cost per unit. So that is how absorption costing works. Hopefully everybody is clear about the process of absorption costing. Is it yes? No problem. Is it yes? Okay here. Is it yes? How absorption costing works? So in absorption costing, we calculated the cost per unit for every product. But what activity-based costing additionally does? Right, as I told you, it is a method of distribution of overheads first, and it distributes overheads more accurately and logically, but in a detailed manner. Correct? So it should be a detailed one. Correct? So that is why what I'm doing, I'm just going to explain you the steps of activity based costing. But before explaining the cost steps of activity-based costing, we should the example here. This is the example, the same example that I'll try to do with the help of activity-based costing. So this is the example, the same one. So you can see here, activity-based costing, example 2. Now extending the same case study with the same information, three products, namely PQR, and the basic data is basically the same. Machine hours are given, direct labor hours at the rate $20 per hour, direct material cost is also given, production units are also same, and total overheads are 24 lakh, basically 2,400,000, right? So this is also same. Now what they are just telling us additionally, that the now company chooses to use what activity based costing system for absorbing overheads, and for that purpose the overheads are being analyzed as it. So they are just giving you some additional details like activity, machine setup cost, right? Machine operation cost, inspection cost, material procurement related cost. Further information is also given, particular PQR, batch size units, number of purchase orders per batch, number of inspections per batch. Now they are just asking you to calculate the total cost, the same thing that we calculated earlier, but now they are they want you to calculate total cost with the use of activity based costing only, right? Okay, what I'm doing right now, I'm just explaining you the steps of activity based costing one by one, and then we'll apply those steps and we'll learn how activity based costing do a detailed analysis of overheads and detailed distribution of overheads, and what a difference basically it brings in the product costing process and the final amount of products cost, right? Okay, so should we start activity based costing? Hopefully yes. I'm just continuing with activity based. Okay, so let's start activity based costing here. So this was my slide that we were discussing. Now I am just moving to activity based costing, and I'll explain the steps one by one, right? So what the first step is telling us about. First step is telling us that identify different independent activities within the organization for which the cost can be identified separately. So the first step of activity-based costing, as it does the distribution more logically and in a more detailed manner. That is why the basis for distribution of overheads here is activity. Right. Now the overheads are being absorbed on the basis of activities. In absorption costing, normally we distribute the overheads on the basis of departments, right? Right. Or sometimes we may use a blanket single overhead recovery rate that we did in this that example one's case, right? Okay. So in absorption costing, either we can use departments as a recovery base, or we can have a single factory wide blanket overhead recovery rate. But in activity based costing, we cannot do so. We will distribute the overheads on the basis of activities. And the first thing is to identify the activities within the organization to which we can just relate the cost of different things, right? And this first step is normally given in the question. Basically, it is in the question only, and you need not to run this step for your, you can say, examination point of view, but practical point of view, you are just required to identify the activity, right? So what the question says about activities, just right. So I'm just moving back to the question. This is the question. You can see here. This is our question, and the question says that you can say see the next. You can say this one. The second table in the question exactly tells us about the activities that are being run in the organization. So what this says, now I'm just reading it in detail so that you should be able to understand it. So what they are just telling you that now the company chooses to use activity-based costing, and for that purpose, total production overheads are analyzed as under. They are trying to tell you that total $2,400,000 are being incurred in basically four different type of activities. The first is machine setup cost. second is machine operations cost, the third is inspection cost, and the fourth one is material procurement related cost. So step one, they had already given, they had identified the activities here, and what I'm just doing, I'm just copying the same from here to there only, right? But you are not required to do so in the examination. You are just you can just start from step 3 or 4 only, right? But for your you can say easiness, I'm just doing all the steps one by one so that you can have an idea about it, how practically these steps are taken to calculate activity based costs, right? So what I'm doing, I'm just copying it here. So I'm doing solution 2, update this solution 2, right? And step 1, right? So step 1, uh, I should remove underline uh, and update. Step 1. What is step 1? To identify activities, right? What I'm doing, step 1 is given in the question only. So there are 4 activities, right? This is step 1. That is exactly given in the question. So what we had done, we had just identified 4 activities in the organization. Okay, understood? So there are 4 activities in the organization that we can use for application of activity based costing. We can have n number of activities. We can have n number of activities. That is why it becomes more detailed version of distribution of overheads, right? That is why it sometimes practically become more complicated for the accountant to run or to work with, right? Right, but exactly, it will give you the accurate cost data, correct? So this is how I'm just we are just taking 4 activities for reference purposes. So there are 4 activities, right? So now I'm moving back to slide. So what it is just telling us, compute the cost related to each activity. This is your second step. So you are just required to split your total overheads into activity wise cost, right? So we are just having, you can say, 2,400,000 total overheads basically. So what we are required to do, what we are just required to split these $2,400,000 into activity wise overheads, and for that purpose the data is itself given in the question on, right? So yes, what I'm doing, applying the second step here, right? So this is my second step. Just give me a second. So we should apply second step here, and here is your Excel sheet. Right, how to apply step second, step 2. So I'm just copying the data from here. So this is your step 2. I should update this. And for applying step 2, I should obviously copy the whole table again. So for that purpose, what they are giving us, they are just giving us percentages, that how much percentage each activity is having exactly. Right. So what to do? I am just creating one more column here. Right. And here what I should write, cost. Correct. Okay. And one more row I need, that should be there for total. This is how your table will look like, and this is how you should exactly proceed in the examination. Try to copy each and everything as much as possible, right? Just because you will have a limited time of 3 hours and 15 minutes in your examination, that is why you should try to copy maximum data from your question only to save your time, right? So that is how you should work, right? So step 2, I'm just talking about like, okay, we are just going to find out activity wise cost. I don't need this. So total cost, I know that total cost is $2,400,000, right? So I'm just putting total cost here, $2,400,000, right? So this is your total cost, and what I'll do, I'll just apply the percentage given in the question to this total cost, right? So 20% of 2,400,000 is 480,000. So that is why machine setup cost is having a cost of $480,000. Similarly, I'll repeat my formula. 200 for 2,400,000 should be multiplied with 30%. That is 720,000 for machine operations cost. And similarly, I'm repeating my formula. So here 960,000 is considered as inspection cost or inspection activities cost, and the final one is 10% of 2,400,000 is $240,000, that is material procurement related cost. This is your second step, right? So you had identified the cost of each activity. So yeah, now what you are doing, you will not just distribute $2,400,000 collectively. You will just distribute separately. Machine setup cost will be distributed separately. Machine operation cost will be distributed separately. Inspection and material procurement related cost will be distributed separately by taking a separate recovery. That is what activity based costing is all about, right? Okay, so we had applied second step here, correct? Is it yes? Okay, we had applied it. The second step, what to do now? I'm just showing you the next step. What is the next step here? Step 3, you had calculated cost related to each activity. The step 3 says identify cost drivers related to each activity. That will also be given in the question only, right? Cost driver related to each activity, right? That will be given in the question also. Okay, what are the cost drivers? A cost driver is basically the activity wise absorption base, right? In absorption costing, we need an absorption base to absorb all the overheads to the products. So in an earlier example, we had taken machine hours to absorb the entire $2,400,000 to the product's cost. But whenever we apply the activity based costing, we need a separate absorption base for each and every activity. So what is a cost driver then? The cost driver is basically a separate absorption base for every activity. So you need to find out the suitable recovery or absorption base for each activity separately, and that must be given in the question only. You need to just select that which is the most suitable cost driver for a particular kind of activity, right? So we should again move to the example only. And if you see in the question, right, in the third table, they are giving you batch sizes, number of purchase orders, number of inspections per batch, right? So accordingly, you need to identify the suitable cost driver for each and every activity. What I'm doing, I'm just copying this table again, the relevant portion only, right? And this is your step 3. And here I should write cost driver. Oh, just a second. I selected two cells. Right. Not. Acha. They are. These are merged cells. Okay. Copy it here on. Right. And I'll merge it. Right. Because I need exactly more space. Right. So cost. So here I am writing. Instead of cost, I'll write what? Cost driver. Correct. So we need cost drivers to this. What we need here? Cost drivers. Right. So I'm just creating outline for this table and here also. Right. So what is the appropriate cost driver? If I see the machine setup cost, we need to understand the nature of the activity for the purpose of selecting an appropriate cost driver. Right. So what is the nature of activity? Machine setup cost. Machine setup cost is basically related with the cost of an activity, or you can say that is to be done after every production run. Right. That means after a certain number of units, after production of a certain number of units, or you can say a batch, machine needs a stoppage for the purpose of cleaning, okay, or for the purpose of restarting. Right. So whenever machine is being restarted after a number of after a certain number of products, you can say a batch, a setup cost is basically incurred. That is why you cannot relate the setup cost with the number of machine hours. It is rather to be related with what? The total number of production runs or production batches, just because it is to be incurred after each and every batch. Right. So that is why it is a batch related activity. So appropriate cost driver is number of production batches, and the data is given in the question only. Batch size units and batch size in units is given, and number of batch we can calculate. Right. So that is why the appropriate cost driver for this activity will be number of production batches. Just a second. Oh, yes. Right. So number of production batches is a bold thing. Just give me a second. Now it looks perfect, right? So number of production batches or number of batches, you can say simply. For your information, I'm just writing it production batches. You can simply write number of batches also. It is understandable, right? Okay. Number of production batches. Right. So appropriate cost driver is number of production batches. Then second one is machine operation cost. That means it relates to running of the machine, and that should be related with what? Exactly the machine. Right. That is why here the appropriate cost driver would be machine hours. Right. Is it okay? Yes. I had written it machine hours. Third one is inspection cost. That is basically related with what? Here they are just given you a data number of inspections per batch. That is why it must be related with number of inspections on. Right. So I'm writing here number of inspection. Right. Last and the important one, material procurement related cost. For that purpose, they are giving you a data number of purchase orders. So material procurement is related with obviously number of material requisitions or number of purchase orders, right? So this would be related with number of purchase orders. So hence they are required to be distributed on the basis of purchase orders. The number of purchase orders. Right. Number of purchase orders would be an appropriate cost driver for the same. Hopefully you understood this. Is it okay, students? Yes. Is it okay? Hopefully yes. Right. So what we had done, we had just identified the cost driver related to each activity. Now you can feel the difference between absorption costing and activity based costing, right? Whereas in absorption costing, we were distributing all the overheads to 1,400,000 on the basis of machine hours only. Here we are just identifying that okay, we are having only one single item that is related with machine hours, that is machine operations cost, and the other things are not basically very much relation or very much in line with machine hours. That is why they are not required to be distributed on the basis of machine hours only, right? They are just required to be distributed on the basis of any other cost driver. That is why what we had done, we had identified separate cost driver for each and every activity. Correct? Now we'll distribute machine setup costs on the basis of number of production batches, inspection costs on the basis of number of inspections, and material procurement costs on the basis of number of purchase orders. Right. That is how your activity based costing will work and gives you an accurate data about the product costing. Now, hopefully, you are pretty clear about the process. Right. And you now can like identify the difference that activity based costing will create in the product costing. Correct? Yes. So now I'm just moving further and applying step number 4. What is step number 4 then? It says compute the product wise total number of cost drivers for each activity. Technically, in maximum questions, right, you need to just start with this step 4 only. Right? 1, 2, 3 is approximately normally given in the question. Right? That is why in maximum questions, you need to start from step 4 only. Okay, so now I'm just applying the step 4. What does it say? It says like you need to identify the number of cost drivers for each and every activity together, right? Separately, I'm sorry, right? So what I'm doing, I'm just copying the data from here and just updating step 4. Step 4 would be applied. I'm just copying this one from here and pasting it here, right? So now we know that I'll need one more column here, right? Total column. So I'll copy the total column from the above example. This one. Okay, I'll just I'll not copy. Right. Copy from here on. Right. And making it as total column. Correct? Okay, we need total number of cost drivers. No, that is why. So we know that for machine setup cost, we need number of production batches, right? And they had just given you a data of batch size in units, right? Okay, batch size in units. So I need, first of all, I need total production, product wise production of every product, right? That is why what I'll do, I'll just copy this production in units from here to here, right? Okay, so this one, right? So I know that the batch sizes given for each and every product, right? What is the batch size? For product P, that is being manufactured in the batches of 150 units, whereas product Q is being manufactured in the batches of 500 units, right? And the R is being manufactured in the batches of 1000 units, right? And if we want to produce 3000 units of product P, then how many batches will be required? The number of batches will be, how many batches will be? How many batches will be? What we should do? We should just divide 3000 by 150, right? So 3000 units are required to be produced in 150 units per batch. That is why total number of batches will be 20 batches per unit for product P, right? So in all, total number of batches for product P will be 20 batches, right? And for product Q, total number of batches, I'll update the formula here, right? So total number of batches, we want to produce 5000 units, and every batch will have 500 units. That is why total number of batches will be 10 only. Right. Similarly, for product R, the total number of batches we want to produce 20,000 units and batch size is 1000 units. So 20 batches for product R is also required. Right. And I'll just have the total number of batches by adding all the details together. Right. What happened? Just a second. Right. So this is 50. Correct? So total number of batches that we are just required to produce is 50 for P, Q and R taken together. Separately for P there are 20 batches, Q 10 batches and R 20 batches are there. Right. Then for next thing, that is machine operation cost, we need to calculate machine hours, total machine hours, and we had calculated it also. So number of machine hours per unit, they had given us machine hours per unit. So 10, 18 and 14 respectively. I'm just copying the data from here to here. Machine hours. Now we have machine hours, students. Yes, right. Give me a second. Just copying the things, right here. So machine hours per unit I know, right? And what I'll do, I'll just calculate total machine hours. Total machine hours, right? How many machine hours then will be there here? How many machine hours? So we know that machine hours per unit. How many machine hours per unit are there? For P it is 10 machine hours and the production in units is also given. So what we'll do, we'll multiply production in units with number of machine hours per unit. So if we want to produce 3000 units of P and every unit is taking 10 machine hours, then total 30,000 machine hours will be required. Right. And I'm pasting the formula here. So here we'll need 90,000 machine hours for Q and 2,80,000 machine hours for R, and in all 4 lakh machine hours are required. Right. So for second activity we had just calculated the number of cost drivers, correct? Total machine hours. For third activity, that is an inspection cost, we need number of inspection batches, correct? So they had just given us a data about the number of inspection per batch. They had given us. So I'm just copying the data. Number of inspection per batch. This is 543, right? And again, total inspections. We need total inspection just because it is giving us a data about batch wise product inspection. So total inspections taken. So they are telling us that P requires 5 inspection per batch. Then how many batches of P are there? 20 batches, and every batch requires 5 number of inspections. That is why for P, 100 inspections would be conducted. Right. For Q and R, I'm pasting the formula here. Right. 40 inspections and 60 inspections will be incurred respectively, right? And total number of inspections would be 200 inspections for all the products taken. Is it correct? Yes, that is how you should work with the Excel. Just copy the things from the question and update, right? So total number of inspections you calculated, and the last one you need number of purchase orders, and they are also giving us number of purchase orders per batch, right? So I'm copying it, number of purchase orders per batch. So I had just taken number of purchase orders per batch, right? And ultimately we will now calculate total number of purchase orders. So total purchase orders, right? So total purchase orders are how many purchase orders? So per batch number of purchase order 3 in case of P, and how many batches are there? 20 batches multiplied by 3 will be able to identify that 60 purchase orders are for product P, and I'll paste the formula here, and 100 and 160 purchase orders for Q and R respectively, and there are total 320 purchase orders. Right. This is how your step 4 will be done. Is it correct? Yes. Is it okay? Is it okay? Yes. Okay, I'll just put a heading here because I forgot to put a heading. So I'm just putting a heading here, cutting the data from here and pasting it here, right? And putting a heading. This statement is called as statement of cost drivers, right? Okay. Is it yes? Is it yes? Okay, is it yes? Okay. So now we are just required to calculate or apply step 5. What is step 5 then? What it says? That step 5 compute cost per driver. Right? Actually, step 4 and step 5 can be done together in a single table for the purpose of saving time, right? But what I'm doing right now, I'm just copying the table again so that I should be able to explain you that this is the step 5 exactly, right? Okay, so but what you will do, you will just extend the table and to calculate cost per driver basically, right? So I'm just applying the step 5 here, that how to calculate cost per driver. So this is your step 5, and here I'll calculate cost per driver, right? What is cost per driver exactly? Cost per driver is basically very similar to overhead absorption rate OAR in case of absorption costing. But the primary difference is, whereas OAR is basically calculated for a department or the entire factory, either we can have departmental OAR or a blanket OAR, but cost per driver represents that the absorption rate is basically based on activities. So cost per driver is basically activity wise OAR, right? So this is basically not very difficult. So I had just copied wrong table, right? So cost per driver is not to be calculated, right? This table. What I'll do, I'll delete it, right? So cost per driver, what we need, first we need like activity. I need to copy this table, activity and cost driver, right? activity and cost driver. I copied this, right? Then what I need, activity wise cost that we had calculated here. I'm just copying it here, activity, and I'm pasting the values on, right? This is activity wise cost basically with students. So cost, activity wise cost. We need activity wise cost. We had just taken it, and then we need activity wise cost drivers. Right. Activity wise cost driver. Number of cost driver basically. Right. Cost driver volume, or you can say cost driver volume. I'll do. I'll write it here. Cost driver volume. Right. And we'll wrap the text and increase the row width, row height. Right. So cost driver volume. So cost driver volume, how much cost driver volume is there? What do I do? We calculated it. Yes, we calculated it. Yes. How much it is? For machine setup, we need number of batches, and we have number of batches, students. Is it yes? We have number of batches here. We have number of batches. How many batches are there? We have number of batches. So who is going to tell me how many number of batches are there? Sir, these are number of batches, 50 batches. Cost driver volume is 50 batches. I'm linking it together. Right. Machine operation cost, we need total machine hours, and we have it total machine hours. I had just linking the cell together. Right. For inspection, we need total number of inspection, and we have it total number of inspections. For material procurement related cost, we need total number of purchase order, and we also have it. Right. So what I'm doing, I'm just writing cost driver volume here. Right. Then finally cost per driver. Right. Cost. The final thing that we are required to calculate is cost per driver or activity wise OAR. Right. So cost per driver or activity wise OAR. So how to calculate the same? Just to divide total cost with volume of cost driver. That means we have total machine setup cost that we have for $80,000, and we incurred this for manufacturing of 50 batches. That is why cost per driver is 9,600 per batch. Right. Okay. Similarly, for machine operations, it is 1.8 per hour, and I am copying the formula from here to here. For inspection, it is 4,800 per inspection, and for material procurement related cost, it is 750 per purchase order. Now you can just find the difference between activity based costing and absorption costing. Whereas in absorption costing, we had only one single recovery rate, $6 per machine hour. But here we are having multiple OARs First is 9600 per batch, then 1.8 per hour, and then inspection is 4800 per inspection and 750 per purchase order. That is why it will give you the more accurate data, right? Okay, so this is how your five, step five is to be done, right? So I had not updated it. I'm updating it right now. Step five. In step 5, you basically calculate activity-wise OER, right? So maximum of the students would be thinking that, oh, this is a huge question, right? We have to apply so many things here. That is why in the initial example, the waiter was denying, right? I'll not do, and I'll not prepare a separate list just because it will demand a lot of effort, right? Right, that is why. It will give you accurate data, but it will be little complicated. But from examination point of view, students, you need not to obviously run all the steps. You need to start from step 4 only, right? You'll do step 4, then step 5, and then step 6. That's it only, right? Whatever the earlier steps are there, I had just copied from the question only, and that you are not required to do, right? There is no requirement to copy the data from the question whenever it is written there, right? If any further calculation is being needed, you can copy the data from the question and do the further calculations. And that is why you need to start from step 4 on, right? Okay, so that is why we had just calculated cost per driver, and afterwards, what we'll do? What we'll do? We'll run step 6. So what is step 6? Let's see. What is step 6? Is now calculate product wise overhead. This is the last and final step where we calculate the product wise overhead cost. And then again, how, sir? We had just calculated activity wise OAR. Now you are able to calculate product wise overhead cost. So step 6, product wise overhead cost. Overheads cost. Right. Now I need again this data, product wise overhead cost. I'm copying it, right? So we know that we are having multiple items in cost. First is machine setup cost, right? First is machine setup cost. Second is machine operation cost. Third is inspection cost, and so on, right? So if we talk about like machine setup cost, we calculated that machine setup cost is basically 96,000, 9600. I'm sorry, 9,600 for every batch, right? So it is 9600 for every batch. What we are required to do, we will see that how many batches of product P are there. So it is, we had calculated earlier in step 4, right? How many batches are there for product P? It is 20 batches. So I'll multiply 9600 per batch with 20 batches for calculation of cost in case of product P. And I'll update this formula in two different cells also to calculate the total amount of cost, correct? And I'll just apply the sum formula, although it is not needed exactly, but for cross verification purposes, if you apply this formula, so it will confirm you that you had done the question correctly, right? So what we had calculated activity wise, I'm sorry, we had calculated product wise machine setup cost, that is total one 192,000 total for product P, 9600 for product Q, and 192,000 for product R, and in total it was basically how much? It was was basically 480,000 that we had earlier calculated in step 2, right? So you can cross check from there also. Okay, machine setup cost, total cost was 480,000, and that is being distributed between PQR in the ratio of number of batches, and on the basis of number of batches we had just distributed it, and that is why now we are having 192, 96 and 192 respectively. Correct? Right. Now I am just calculating machine operation cost, that is to be based on machine hours, and we have an OAR 1.8, and we have machine hours also. I'm sorry. Right. We have machine hours also. So I'm just multiplying 1.8 with number of machine hours, and that you had just calculated here, this one, right, and applying the formula in the table, right, and copying the formula from here also, right. Hopefully you understood, right, what we had done. We had just distributed 720,000 of machine operation cost on the basis of machine hours among the products PQR, right. Then similarly inspection cost, we have $4,800, $4,800 for every inspection batch, right. What I'll do, I'll multiply the same with number of inspections, right, and that is how we'll be able to identify this. Copy the formula from here only, right. Then that is how you had just distributed your total 9 960,000 into PQR respectively. Hopefully it is good. Understood? Yes. This font size is little smaller. So I'm increasing it, trying to increase it so that it should be visible. Right. So hopefully it is visible now. Correct. Now I'm just applying the fourth and final overhead absorption rate or cost per driver. That is 750 per purchase orders, and we have separate number of purchase order for each and everything. So I'm just applying this to here also and copying the formula from here, right. So you understood, hopefully understood, right, that how we distributed the cost. Okay, then we can have column wise total overheads. I'm just applying a total of applying the formula of sum of respective column, right. Yes, and copying the same here also, and you can just copy the same here also, and you can find out, okay, we were having 2,400,000 of overheads that we had distributed in this way, right. That is how your overheads are being now distributed in between PQR products on the basis of activities, right. And finally you need obviously a product wise data, so that is why I'll just write production in units here. So how many units you produced, I'll write it here and copying it, production in units, right. Right, so I'm just writing or copying production in units, and then finally you will be able to calculate your overheads per unit, right. How then? We'll divide total overheads with the number of units, right. And I'll copy the formula in remaining cells also to get the overhead cost per unit. So finally, you are just able to identify the overhead cost per unit. Last but the most important step, sorry, last but the most important step, step 7. Here we will calculate total cost per unit. And how it will be calculated? I'll copy the table from earlier solution. This one cost per unit, right? This table I am calculating cost. I am copying, right? Cost per unit, right? So we know that what is the prime cost, correct? We know that what is the prime cost. Prime cost will remain same. The problem is the distribution of overheads only. That is why prime cost will remain same, correct now? Right. And what we'll do, we'll just replace this overheads per unit with the overheads that we had calculated on the basis of activity based cost. Right. So I'm just right. So I had just copied it and recalculated the total cost per unit. Now you can see the difference. For your reference, what I'm doing, I am copying this one again and I'll put it aside with the cost that we had calculated on the basis of activity based cost. Right. So here, I'm just copying it here again. So now you can see the difference, students. Right. What is the difference? Once you calculated the cost on the basis of, you can say, absorption costing, your product P was having a cost of $230 per unit. That is significantly under cost, right? If you calculated the cost as per activity based costing, you can see the difference. Now the cost is 427 per unit in comparison with 230 per unit under absorption costing basis. So if your product is basically under cost, your product will definitely be under price. That is why product P will not be able to give you enough profits that you deserve. Right? That disaster basically will be created with the help of, you can say, the absorption cost. The absorption costing can cause you that sort of disasters, right? Just because absorption is distributing the overheads only a single recovery basis, right? Or using a single recovery basis, right? But whereas in activity based costing, we are having multiple recovery bases. That is why we are having multiple recovery rates. That is why we are having more accurate cost data. Product Q is approximately having similar results, right? Either in absorption costing or in activity based costing. In activity based absorption costing, it was little slightly over costed, right? But in activity based costing is right now more accurately costed. And product R is also having the similar kind of thing. It was earlier it was overcosted, that is why overpriced. And in activity based costing, we know the exact cost that is relatively lower than the cost of absorption cost. Right? Understood? So that is why if it is overcosted earlier, then again overpriced, then again you must not be able to face off the competition in that case. Right. So that is why sometimes activity based costing will help you out to find out that what is the accurate cost of production. So that obviously you should be able to identify the accurate cost of production and accurate price for the same, fair price for the same, and fair pricing will help you out in earning the adequate amount of profit and facing the competition in correct manner, right? So that is why activity based costing sometimes become more important for us, right? Okay, so hopefully everyone is able to understand that what activity based costing basically does for us right now. Right, now let's move back to the slide, what it is just having, what we are just left with. Students, I have just discussed the entire concept of activity-based costing. We had done a question also that is basically gives us a comparison, fair comparison between the activity-based costing and the absorption costing. Hopefully now you are just able to identify the difference between the absorption costing and activity-based costing and the usefulness of the activity-based. Now what we'll do, we'll just have a look on takeaways again, right? So what we had understood with this, you can say the whole exercise, what we had understood with this whole exercise, that activity-based costing, yes, is a technique for distribution of overheads, correct distribution of overheads. Again, it allocates overheads in more detailed manner, more logical manner than traditional or absorption costing, right? Then it do not reduce cost. I told you total overheads were 2,400,000 and these total overheads were same either in case of activity based costing or in case of absorption costing. Total overheads were not basically reduced. Right. Total overheads were always same 2,400,000. But yes, activity based costing, what it had done, it had just basically calculated the cost in more accurate and logical way. Right. That is why it will not reduce your cost. Sometimes it may increase your cost. Right. The cost of implementation of ABC can be there just because you will need more trained staff, right, that is having an idea about activity based costing, and the staff may demand more salaries, right, and sometimes there may be a technical difficulties in implementation of activity based costing, and to remove those technical difficulties you need more equipments, more you can say support, and that will again increase your cost, right? So sometimes implementation of ABC will increase your cost, right, but ABC and absorption costing will be applicable in a different in certain different circumstances only. They are both helpful for us. Normally, the small and medium enterprises look forward to adopt absorption costing just because it will not have that kind of detail in it. It will not have that kind of implementation cost involved, right? But the large industries, large companies, large organizations dealing in multiple products, uh, two, obviously they need to apply activity based costing to have more accuracy in their cost structure, right? So that is why activity based costing becomes important for them. So that is why when we should use activity based costing, when we are basically having the benefits that are more than the cost of implementation. Benefits from activity-based costing should be more than the cost of implementation of activity-based costing. Then only it is viable or feasible to apply or use activity-based costing. So that is how this is basically a very small simple concept. So I'll just put in the description box what questions you can do from your, you can say, exam kit after this video. So you should try all those questions, although activity based costing is normally not being asked in section C, right? It is basically being asked in section A and B type questions, right? But as I earlier told you that it is very much important for APM as well. That is why I told you, I explained you in a thorough manner, right? I tried to explain it in a thorough manner with more logical approach. If you want to ask anything, if any query is there, you can just comment your queries in the description box, in the comment box, right? And I'll try to address all your queries, right? If the queries are if I receive a huge number of queries regarding like questions or any concept, I'll just create an additional video for the same. But for that purpose, I need your queries and comments, right? If you like the video, if you understood the concept well, so I request you to like the video, subscribe the channel, share the video with your fellow students, with your fellows, so that they should have the benefits. They should take the benefit of this video. Just because of what I'm doing this exercise for your benefits only. So if you are feel benefited, just comment, like, share, and subscribe. And with this thought, I'm just ending this video. I had just put my email ID also. If you want to ask any query regarding this video, you have any questions, you can just mail me as well. So with this simple thought, with this simple, you can say, note, I'll just want to stop this video, right? And definitely, I expect that you will definitely be benefited with this video, and you'll comment your queries in the comment box, and you'll surely like, share, and subscribe, right? So till then, you should keep practicing and enjoy your learning. And we'll meet again in the next video of PM, and I'll continue this series, and I'll just try to take as many as important concepts that I can take uh, here, and you can also suggest me that next video I should what topic I should take in my next video, right? So till then, bye bye and take care. Okay, students, we'll meet again in the next video with the next concept.